In the shadowy corners of Alfred Hitchcock's 1946 masterpiece, Notorious, a single camera angle holds secrets that film scholars have overlooked for nearly 8 decades. Hidden in plain sight, tucked away in doorways, and reflected in mirrors, lies a visual storytelling technique so subtle, so profoundly intimate, that it reveals the tortured soul of cinema's most conflicted heroine. Watch The Doorway, because that's where Hitchcock's greatest story hides, waiting to be discovered by those brave enough to look beyond the obvious. Tonight, we unveil the angle that changes everything you thought you knew about Alicia Huberman's journey from self-destruction to redemption. Alfred Hitchcock was never just a director, he was a magician of human psychology, painting emotions across celluloid with the precision of a surgeon and the soul of a poet. By 1946, the master of suspense had already established himself as cinema's premier architect of anxiety, but Notorious would become his most psychologically complex creation. Little did audiences know that within this tale of espionage and forbidden love, Hitchcock was crafting a visual language so sophisticated that its deepest secrets would remain hidden for generations. Doorway angle, a seemingly innocuous framing choice that appears 17 times throughout the film, represents far more than mere compositional preference. Each carefully orchestrated shot through thresholds, archways, and entrance frames creates a visual metaphor for Alicia Huberman's psychological imprisonment. Hitchcock understood that the human eye naturally gravitates toward doorways in real life. We're evolutionarily programmed to monitor entrances and exits as potential sources of danger or salvation. But in Notorious, these portals become something far more sinister. They become the bars of Alicia's invisible prison. Consider the film's opening sequence, where we first glimpse Alicia through the frosted glass of her father's study door. The camera doesn't simply show us the door. It positions us as voyeurs, peering through the narrow gap between frame and threshold. This isn't accidental framing. It's Hitchcock announcing his visual thesis. We will witness this woman's story through layers of separation, always at a distance, always looking in from the outside. The doorway becomes our introduction to a character who will spend the entire film trapped between spaces, never fully belonging to either side of any threshold she crosses. What makes this technique revolutionary is its subtlety. Unlike the obvious symbolism of birds in The Birds, or the staircase in Vertigo, the doorway motif operates on a subliminal level. Viewers feel the claustrophobia without consciously recognizing its source. They sense Alicia's entrapment without understanding how Hitchcock has visually constructed her cage. This is filmmaking at its most sophisticated, where meaning is embedded so deeply in the visual fabric that it bypasses conscious thought and speaks directly to the unconscious mind. The genius lies not just in the eye, consistency of the technique, but in its evolution throughout the narrative. As Alicia's situation becomes more desperate, the doorways become narrower, the frames more confining. What begins as elegant architectural framing gradually transforms into visual suffocation, mirroring the protagonist's psychological journey from reluctant spy to trapped victim. Human beings have an ancient, primal relationship with doorways that predates civilization itself. In our collective unconscious, thresholds represent transition, transformation, and vulnerability, the dangerous moments when we move from known to unknown territory. Hitchcock, with his profound understanding of human psychology, tapped into this fundamental anxiety to create something unprecedented in cinema, a visual representation of psychological limbo that the doorway shots in Notorious exploit what psychologists call liminal anxiety, the discomfort we feel in transitional spaces. Alicia Huberman exists perpetually in this state of transition, between loyalty and betrayal, love and duty, salvation and damnation. Every doorway she approaches becomes a moment of potential revelation or catastrophe. Will she cross the threshold into safety or deeper peril? Hitchcock never lets us or her know for certain. The famous wine cellar sequence provides the most haunting example of this technique. As Alicia descends the stairs with Devlin, ostensibly to steal the wine cellar key, Hitchcock frames their approach through the doorway at the top of the stairs. The camera holds this position for an agonizing 43 seconds, creating a sense of dread that has nothing to do with the actual danger they face. We're watching through the architectural equivalent of a noose, and our subconscious recognizes the visual metaphor, even if our conscious mind doesn't process it. But the psychology runs deeper than simple anxiety. Doorways in Notorious represent the spaces between identities, and Alicia's identity is perhaps cinema's most fractured. She's simultaneously the daughter of a Nazi sympathizer and an American patriot, a promiscuous party girl and a woman capable of profound love, a victim and a willing participant in her own destruction. The doorway shots capture this psychological fragmentation by literally fragmenting her presence in the frame. We see pieces of Alicia a shoulder here, a reflection there, but never the complete person. This visual technique creates what film theorists call scopophilic frustration, the deliberate thwarting of the viewer's desire to see. Just as Alicia is denied full knowledge of her situation by both Devlin and Sebastian, we're denied full visual access to her experience. We become complicit in her objectification, reduced to peering at her through architectural constraints, just as the men in her life view her through the narrow lens of their own needs and desires. The doorways also serve as visual representations of choice itself. Each threshold Alicia approaches represents a moment of decision, but Hitchcock's framing suggests that her choices are illusory. The doorway constrains her options to a binary: enter or remain, advance or retreat, submit or resist. There's no third option, no escape from the frame that contains her. This visual imprisonment mirrors her narrative imprisonment caught between Sebastian's possessive love and Devlin's manipulative duty. The most psychologically devastating doorway shot in Notorious occurs not around Alicia, but around Devlin, and it's a moment that redefines everything we think we know about Cary Grant's supposedly heroic character. In the scene where Devlin first proposes that Alicia infiltrates Sebastian's organization, Hitchcock positions the camera outside the office door, looking in through the narrow gap between door and frame. What appears to be a simple establishing shot is actually a masterpiece of character revelation, disguised as conventional coverage. Devlin, supposedly the film's romantic lead, is literally caged within the doorframe as he coldly explains how Alicia must prostitute herself for her country. The visual irony is devastating. The man who claims to love this woman has become her captor, and Hitchcock ensures we see him through the bars of his own moral prison. Grant's typically suave demeanor takes on a sinister quality when viewed through this constrained frame. Suddenly, his charm becomes manipulation. His authority becomes coercion. The genius of this particular shot lies in its duration and staging. Hitchcock holds the doorway frame for nearly 2 minutes, forcing us to watch Devlin's entire proposal through this visual barrier. As he speaks about duty and sacrifice, the doorframe creates a literal barrier between him and redemption. He cannot step outside this frame, both literally and metaphorically, because he's trapped by his own inability to choose love over duty. The doorway becomes a confessional booth, where Devlin reveals his true nature, not through dialogue, but through visual imprisonment. What makes this moment particularly haunting is how it subverts our expectations of Cary Grant as a screen persona. For over a decade, Grant had represented the epitome of sophisticated masculinity: charming, protective, ultimately trustworthy. But seen through Hitchcock's doorway frame, Grant's Devlin becomes something far more complex and troubling. His refusal to fully commit to Alicia isn't portrayed as noble restraint, but as emotional cowardice. The doorway traps him in his own indecision, and we're forced to confront the uncomfortable reality that our supposed hero might be the story's true Villain. The positioning of this shot also creates a voyeuristic dynamic that implicates the audience in Devlin's moral failure. We're literally looking in from the outside, positioned as observers rather than participants in this emotional manipulation. Hitchcock forces us to recognize our own complicity in watching Alicia's exploitation unfold. Just as Devlin uses his position of authority to manipulate Alicia into danger, we use our position as viewers to consume her suffering as entertainment. This doorway shot works in perfect counterpoint to the wine cellar sequence that follows, where Alicia and Devlin are framed together in the cellar doorway, suggesting their temporary alliance against Sebastian. This earlier office scene shows Devlin alone in his frame, isolated by his own emotional limitations. The visual parallel is unmistakable. Both men, Sebastian and Devlin, are prisoners of their own making, and Alicia becomes the victim of their competing forms of captivity. Most heartbreaking implementation of Hitchcock's doorway technique occurs in Alicia's bedroom mirror scene, where the doorway frame reflects not just her physical image, but her shattered psychological state. As Ingrid Bergman's Alicia prepares for another day of deception in Sebastian's house, Hitchcock position